All right, so this is part 2 of pulling the cylinder head off the S2K, and let's get into it. All right, so right now I'm just pulling off the supercharger. Got the oil feed line disconnected, got all the bolts out. This one, I'm trying to pull off the mounting bracket and the supercharger together. I don't have to put it all back on again. Just this bolt won't come out. Not a big issue. Just gonna drain the oil and disconnect the return line, and pull this thing basically off, as you can see. All right, we're under the car right now, and you can see the oil return. I'm just gonna go ahead and pull this fitting off, and then drain the oil out, and see what this thing looks like. Jeez. All right, so while we're waiting for the oil to drain down there, which looks pretty milky, I just went ahead, pulled the headers off, disconnected them underneath, and then just slid them off right here. I'm just gonna leave them like that. I'm not gonna pull them out completely from the car. You don't need to. And I'm gonna go ahead and pull this supercharger off as well now. So I'm gonna do that, and it should pretty much everything should be disconnected. Just need to disconnect the oil drain line, and it should be good. All right, so got the supercharger out and the bracket for it, you can see. And now I'm gonna go ahead and get the water to air intercooler off. And rather than pull the bumper off to pull those lines off for it to drain the coolant, I'm probably just gonna go ahead and take the little fill plug out, stick a plunger in there or whatever they call it, and suck all the water out of there, and then pull the lines off, and that should be fine. That way you don't have to pull everything apart, because this is brand new coolant. There's not many miles on it at all. But I also got to drain the engine coolant as well, and I will have to drain most of that. Pull the cylinder head off. So I'm gonna go ahead and do those two things, and then I'll pull that intercooler off and then go from there. All right, we just got the intercooler pulled off and drained all the coolant out of that and the radiator and whatnot. And of course, Mark shows up and is doing more weird things with rims. So he just removed the rays on this to try these ones on, which are 20s, and he has 18s on here, and they don't fit very well at all.
They don't clear big brakes.
Oh yeah, they don't clear the big brakes. Yeah.
Look at the length of the brakes. They're so big for no reason.
What?
Look at this. This shit is dead as huge.
They are pretty big.
Brembos?
Nope. Why not? And now he's taking the rays off the Lexus, and he's gonna try them on the S2K because he has nothing better to do today.
Yep, exactly.
No, I think these will look cool on this. No, maybe.
The person I bought them off had them on an S2000.
Oh really? Yeah.
So it should work. I don't see why it wouldn't.
That'll probably work better than your engine. But anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and remove the belt, the tensioner, alternator, and a few other things. Go from there. All right, so went ahead, got the tensioner, the belt, the alternator, and then the tensioner and alternator bracket off. And now it's time to get this intake manifold off. And if I remember correctly last time, the bolts in the back at the bottom are a pain to get to. You can get to them, they're just not fun. So gotta do that. You also gotta loosen this bolt down here, and I believe there's another one on this bracket they gotta loosen. I think there's 2 of them in total to get that bracket out of the way. And then basically you start removing all the intake manifold bolts and all the wires and whatnot connected to it. So another thing is, I think last time, or what a lot of people do is they just loosen the top alternator bolt, move the alternator out of the way to get these bolts for this tensioner bracket. It's way easier just to remove the alternator. It's not that big of a deal to remove the alternator. It's I found that way easier than just pushing it off to the side. You can get to the bolts way easier because those are not fun to get to either. So now we go ahead and get this intake manifold off. All right, so finally got the intake manifold unbolted from the cylinder head, and that thing is a pain. Most of the bolts are not bad, I guess. Get the top bolts pretty easy, obviously. And then as you progressively go farther in for the bottom bolts, it keeps getting harder and harder until the very last bolt you guys can't even see. It's more of you put your hand back in this tight spot and you feel it, and then you try and get a socket on it. I just used a short 12 mil with a swivel, then a 3-inch extension and a 6-inch extension, and I went down in there like that, put my other hand back there to feel it, and eventually, probably like 30 minutes to an hour, finally got the thing out. It took forever. Also, to make a little bit more room, I disconnected this hose from here, just pushed it off to the side instead of it being in the way of my hand going back there. And some coolant will come out of this, just so you guys know. So make sure you have a pan or something underneath there. But can't even show you guys the back bolt. It's down in there. But definitely is not fun to get to. I'll show you guys the intake gasket. It's basically this bolt right here. You really can't see it. It's pain. It's probably the worst part of this whole thing, doing the cylinder head. I remember before it was a pain. It's even more of a pain to put it back on, but you gotta do it. So got it off now finally, and now can keep working on this thing. So next thing I'm gonna go ahead and do is remove this supercharger bracket with the VTEC solenoid, get that pulled off. And then there's also, I believe there's, if I remember correctly, I think there was 3 bolts behind the cylinder head. I think they're 10 mil to remove this bracket. And then there's also the third bolt is for a ground wire. It's all the way at the bottom. Yeah, I can feel it. It's all the way at the bottom there. Just gonna use a 10 millimeter wrench. That should come off. And pull this off as well. Since this is Supercharged, has this extra block. If yours isn't, this will just be up against the cylinder head. But to remove this, since I have this is there, you can remove this thing. I think there's 3 bolts total. 1, 2, 3, and there's another one for this supercharger bracket, one right there, and that should pull right off. And obviously undo the connections. Pretty simple, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that. And I'm also gonna go ahead and remove all these little springs before I pull the cylinder head off and lose these things. All right, so we got this back plate off, and we also got the ground strap off as well from back there, and we're almost there to getting the head off. Next thing we gotta do, take these 2 bolts out to access the inside of the tensioner, put a bolt in it so it holds the tensioner in place and doesn't pop apart when we pull it out. And then once we do that, take these 2 bolts off, pull the tensioner out, make sure the thing is at top dead center. And you can see these little lines have to line up even with the cylinder head, so it's hard to see the lines, but they're dead even right now. And then once we do this, pull the tensioner out, we can go ahead and pull this bolt out right here, take the chain off the cam gear, or intermediate gear, whatever they call it. And I think after that, we can go ahead and pull these head studs out. You can see it does have ARP head studs. And then lift this thing off. All right, so we got the tensioner off and the intermediate gear for the cams. You can see the chain just kind of sits right there. You don't have to worry about it falling down into the case, but you do want to make sure when you pull it out that this little washer right here doesn't come off and fall down into the case. Usually gets stuck there from the oil, so usually not a problem. But I did notice in the by the third rocker arm that blew up, I was cleaning up some of the oil before I pull it off, and I found 2 little rollers. It looks like it's from a bearing of some sort, and I'm not sure if there's a roller bearing in these rockers, and that's what it is from. But I gotta look that up, because I want to make sure I figure out what this came from before I put this thing back together. But for now, I'm going to go ahead now, and I believe pull the cylinder head off. There's 2 bolts right here. Probably just pull those right out. Those don't matter too much. And then for the sequence to pull it off, it's the opposite of putting it on. So normally you go in the middle, work your way out. To pull it off, you start from the ends and then work your way in on each side. So you go ahead and do that. All right, so got all the nuts off the top of the ARP studs. Some of the washers still stuck in there, not a big issue. I just can't really get a magnet in some of the spots, like down there. So I'm just gonna pull them off when I pull the head off, but just gonna unscrew these still. Forgot about that. I already loosened them. But the head studs were definitely tight, so wasn't a problem with those loosening up. Guess we're gonna see why this head gasket went pretty soon here, but just thinking maybe somehow a head stud loosened up or something, but definitely not. Those things were super tight still. So I guess that's a good thing. Those didn't loosen up. Yeah, now I can just basically tap this bottom with a mallet, a little rubber mallet or something, just to free it up a little, and then should be able to just pick it up right here, pull it up, and should come right out. right, so got the cylinder head off. It's over here now, as you can see. I haven't looked underneath yet. It's gonna do that now, I guess. So let's see. So this is number 1 and 2, and you can clearly see right there, head gasket blew out. A little coolant was getting in through there. It's probably the most common spot for a head gasket to blow because the cylinders are so close together, that little spot. But other than that, I think everything looks, for the most part, pretty good. Oh yeah, so right here, you can see head gasket blew right out. Wow, it's a shame. Let's see if I can get this off. Show you guys what we're dealing with. So yeah, you can clearly see right there, blew right out. The other ones look good, although looked like they were about to blow out too. Huh. This thing focuses. See the other side. Yeah, these all look fine, and then this one just blew out. I'm gonna go take a look at the block now. Let's see. Yeah, so right there, you can see the marks from it blowing out. Huh. Everything else looks good. Cylinders look good, I think. It's got one little line there. It's pretty deep. It's kind of strange. But other than that, this one cylinder looks like it's got a few little markings. And this was the one that was bad. That might be a little concerning. But got the head off. All right, so it might be hard to see, but you can see, right? This thing focuses for once. That little metal flakes right there. Right there. It's a little metal flake. And I think there's a few more in there. If I can get it to focus. I just pulled a few out with my finger, but let's see. Anything in there? No. So I think a little bit of metal got in here and messed up the cylinder a little bit. Another thing is these have that coating on it inside the cylinder walls, and number 2 seems to be much more worn out than number 3, and which is interesting as well. So I'm not sure. Yeah, I just don't know if he broke a ring by chance. I doubt it. Didn't have crazy blow by or anything like that, but it is concerning to see that and a little bit of metal in there. All right, so I'm gonna be dropping this off at the machine shop to check if it is warped or not, like officially. Probably has better tools than me, but just grab this flat piece of metal. I think it's like 1/4 inch, and basically just check in to see if there's a gap. So obviously over here, no gap. And now the number 1 cylinder where it blew out, it does look like it has a slight gap, while these ones, let's see, whatever focus, do not have that gap. If you see, it's perfectly flush. So I think the head did warp a little right there, which stinks. All right, so we just dropped the head off at the machine shop, and the head was warped like I thought when I used that flat bar to see. I did see a little bit of gap, so that's gonna have to be redecked again. But guessing these 2 little roller bearing things is what they look like out of a roller bearing. I'm pretty sure those just came out of the rocker that broke, because technically this roller is a bearing. So when it's split, it must have somehow, these somehow must have came out. I'm just not sure exactly how they came out, because that gap right there. I can't imagine they fit out of there unless they came out of the oil galley right there, I'm guessing. But 'cause that's the only thing I could seem to find. I hope the rest of these bearings or rollers are okay. They should be. They all seem good. They all seem to spin perfect. They don't have any play. But yeah, so we're just gonna go ahead and replace like that assembly, the 3 for the I believe it was the intake side, number 3 cylinder. So I'm gonna wait for those to come in. And one thing that's going on right now that I'm a little nervous about is this pretty big score in the cylinder. Hold on, let me turn the light on. So I'm a little concerned about this right here. It's definitely fingernail deep. It's a pretty big scratch, but it does have a few wear marks, and there seems to be another one right there. Not as bad. Can't really feel that one, although it does look deep. But this one's definitely pretty deep. So I'm a little worried about that, especially I saw a little bit of metal on the top of this piston. I don't know if the ring broke or the ring land or something. Definitely worried about it, especially since that one I can feel my fingernail pretty easily. But talk to Mark about it, and we're gonna try and see if this thing runs fine with that. If it does, then run it till it doesn't. Finally loses compression. Eventually it probably will. But if there's no problems, then might as well run it. And if it doesn't, then we'll build the engine instead of the other alternative, which would just be build the engine the way it is right now, sleeve it, new pistons, rods, whatever, full build. But so that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna put it back together, and before I start it or do anything, I'm gonna make sure that this piston passes the leak down test and it passes the compression test to see, and make sure it is okay. If not, pull everything out, pull the engine out, and you guys will see a build video on this thing. So hopefully it's fine. I don't know if it will or won't be. It's a little concerning, but I don't know what else to do. And Mark told me to run it, so that's what we're gonna do. Mark's the boss today. It is his car. So we also got a head gasket spacer. I think it's a 3mm from Cometic. So once we get that in, put the cylinder head back on. Once we get that from the machine shop, and throw all this stuff back on. Put the supercharger back on, cams, whatever. We also got a new cam coming in, new spring and retainer, even though we probably were fine with the other ones, but they were a little chewed up. So I'm gonna do that. This is a Subaru bucket. But and wait till these come in as well. And we can put this thing back together. And for now, we're working on the IEG block. I'm gonna do a cam on this and some other things, so you guys might see a video on this thing. Not sure yet, but yeah, I think that's gonna wrap it up for removing the cylinder head on this thing, and hopefully that number 2 cylinder is okay. Peace.